What is it about Dooku's training that Darth Sidious found so terrifying? Greetings my friends and fellow acolytes, and welcome back to the channel. Count Dooku has had over 7 apprentices in his lifetime over the course of both Legends and canon continuities. As a Sith Lord, he trained Asajj Ventress, Quinlan Vos, Savage Opress, and General Grievous, among a few other Dark acolytes. And as a Jedi Master, Dooku trained Rael Averross, Qui-Gon Jinn, and the subject of our holocron today, Komori Vosa. Nearly every single one of Dooku's apprentices rubbed Palpatine the wrong way, and he deemed them all legitimate threats, enough for him to order the deaths of most of them. While Qui-Gon and Ventress would be the most infamous examples of this, we are actually going to be focused on Dooku's first Padawan, Komori Vosa. In this holocron, we are going to talk about her life, who she was, and why Sidious not only insisted upon her death, but why he seems to hate all of Dooku's apprentices and deem them real, legitimate threats. One thing we can respect about Dooku's training was his adherence to the studies of the Force. In the same way, my friends, we invite you to expand your knowledge by subscribing to the channel and getting notified of all of our daily uploads. So now, let us begin. The story and history of Komori Vosa is a strange one and is very different from most Jedi that embrace a darker path. Komori started her life as Dooku's first apprentice sometime around the year 42 BBY. In this time period, Sidious was still working with Plagueis and Dooku was still a Jedi. The first time we ever see Komori is in the flashbacks of Jango Fett, in the comic series known as Open Seasons. Here, she accompanies her master Dooku and a strike team of Jedi to put down the true Mandalorians, the Mandalorians who were framed for crimes by Death Watch on the planet of Galadran. For those familiar with this story, this was more or less Jango's origin, and how the famous warrior became a wandering bounty hunter, as well as where his hatred for the Jedi started. Long story short, since the true Mandalorians had been framed for massacres that they did not commit, they refused to submit to the Jedi. Komori herself ended up having a loudmouth during the conversation, and got the Jedi in trouble. This resulted in her instigating a fight with the Mandalorians. The Jedi strike team would use brutal methods to suppress the battle, as the Jedi lost control of the conflict very quickly. The strike team even used illegal lightsaber techniques to hack one of Jango's brothers in half right in front of him. Jango would temporarily lose himself and savagely attack the group of Jedi, killing 6 of them with his bare hands, before eventually surrendering once he realized that he was all alone, the last surviving Mandalorian. The Jedi had killed all of the true Mandalorians, his family, right in front of him. From this story, and several others, we aren't surprised to find Komori being described as headstrong and aggressive, with a certain spirit for battle that the Jedi often warned against. Despite these things, however, Dooku was greatly pleased with Komori, and found her impressive in battle, even commending her on Galadran, as she had single-handedly taken down many of the highly trained Mandalorians personally, and showed that she was more powerful than the rest of the team. She was extremely talented with the blade, and possessed a great deal of promise in the Force as well. Like Dooku, she was a star pupil. Komori was very powerful, and would have made a great Jedi if not for her attitude. Being headstrong and aggressive was already alarming, but something that not even Dooku could avoid and was concerned about was her obsession with her master. Komori Vosa was absolutely obsessed with Dooku, and worshipped the ground that he walked upon. She was specifically, though, fascinated with Dooku's mastery of the lightsaber, aspiring to be just as powerful as he had grown. Komori's lightsaber even sported a curved hilt design just as Dooku's did. The council became quite worried when this obsession and infatuation grew to an even greater degree, and both Dooku and the council were aware of these hidden feelings within Komori. Soon, they deemed her unfit to become a Jedi because of this fascination, and Dooku would forbid her from taking the Jedi trials. This left Komori Vosa to feel insulted and betrayed, resulting in her rushing off in the galaxy in an attempt to prove herself worthy to Dooku. To prove herself, Komori vowed to take down the cult known as the Bando Gora. Unfortunately, this mission ended in catastrophe, and all of the Jedi, except for Komori Vosa, were killed, and she was captured. Many months was the young Jedi tortured and held prisoner by the cult, to the point where she was driven to madness over all that had happened to her, specifically her denial of the Jedi trials. And of course, the dark side was waiting for Komori with open arms, embracing it. Feeling it was the only thing that cared for her, Komori Vosa would kill her captors and break free of her chains. Only, she decided not to flee. Instead, the now dark side drunk Komori Vosa took the leadership of the Bando Gora for herself, and would go on to build a criminal enterprise in the Outer Rim gaining followers by putting mind control substances into death sticks. After making deals with the Hutt cartel, the Dugs, and several other dangerous groups, Komori would unknowingly make herself a nuisance to the one person who anyone with power should never seek to bother: Lord Sidious. Komori's exploits had run counter to Palpatine's plans, garnering her attention from the Dark Lord. Sidious saw how powerful and well-trained Komori was, and he found himself concerned that she might be a problem, especially for his future plans. It just so happened though, that this was around the time that Dooku had freshly joined the Sith. Naturally, Sidious ordered his new apprentice to get rid of Vosa, which troubled Dooku a great deal. He was still new to the dark side, and was very reluctant to kill his former Padawan, who he admittedly cared about, especially after having lost Qui-Gon Jinn. Komori Vosa was one of the true tests to Dooku's loyalty. Pushing past this though, Dooku decided to hold a contest among mercenaries, hiring Jango Fett to capture the Dark Jedi. Those familiar with the game Star Wars Bounty Hunters will know this next part, since this is the main plot of the story. After hunting, chasing, and fighting, Jango would find his way through Bando Gora in order to find Komori, and the two would have a final showdown. Jango held his own quite well considering the power of the Dark Jedi, though of course it required full use of his entire arsenal to capture her. Komori would give him the fight of his life. She was trained by Dooku, and fascinated with the dark side almost as much as her former master. Jango though pulled off the impossible and defeated her. However, he decided to spare her life. What Jango did not know was that Dooku had been shadowing him the entire time, and when the bounty hunter spared Komori, Tyrannus would force choke the Dark Jedi from the shadows. Too weak to fight back at this point, Dooku's apprentice was helpless to stop her imminent death, and then the first apprentice of Dooku was no more by the Count's own hand. Shockingly, for a moment, Dooku felt remorse and regret. He cared for Komori Vosa as a person, but also thought that her talents were tragically wasted. Dooku would even comment that she was potentially the most gifted of all of his apprentices. The reason we wanted to highlight this overlooked character is to note the fact that seemingly every one of Dooku's apprentices turn out to be dangerous, especially to Palpatine. They all either grow too powerful or too problematic for Sidious to just let them go, rising far beyond somebody like an Inquisitor, for example. Qui-Gon was involved with the destiny of Anakin, so he had to be killed. Komori made herself a problem due to her incredible power and reach within the criminal underworld. Ventress was becoming too powerful in general, and it made Sidious nervous that Dooku was planning to take over. Savage's death at Sidious's hand was more of a byproduct of his duel with Maul. But of course, Sidious still wanted to take care of the Zabrak, as he was one of the reasons Maul regained prominence. Though of course Sidious didn't really seem to pay much mind to the other three. We don't have any sources to suggest that Sidious ever took notice of Rael Averross or Voss. Quinlan though did become a Jedi again before he became too much of a problem. Grievous was essentially the only student of Dooku that Sidious was completely pleased by, but Grievous was more of a dog to be sicked on the enemies of the Sith. The point is though, Palpatine not only acknowledges the power of each of Dooku's students, but he is actively threatened by it. This being one of the greatest compliments to Dooku's own methods. There is something about Dooku's training that breeds strong and volatile warriors. They were all free thinkers, dangerously cunning, and were extremely hard to kill. This all goes to Dooku's training. Even as a Jedi, Dooku was incredibly stern and tough. His motif was to expect nothing less than perfection, with heavy consequences if met with failure. Both Qui-Gon and Rael recall how difficult life was training under Dooku, but they were both thankful for it in the end. The no-nonsense training breeds resourcefulness and resilience. Power. Dooku impressed these kinds of perfectionism on his apprentices. It made each of them expect nothing less out of themselves, but the absolute best. While his training was harsh, and sometimes even cruel, Dooku was consistently able to produce powerful wielders of the Force, thus giving Sidious pause for concern. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on the tale of Komori Vosa? What is your take on why Dooku trains his apprentices so well? And let us know in the comments down below your thoughts on the Count and his many students. And as always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.